already then, I got this idea what this game would be, and I was so hyped about it for a year. And then when it came out, it just blew my mind.
Today we're going to talk about Gothic, a game that our guest, after 20 years, still uses as a reference point when it comes to immersion.
Welcome to the colony.
I'd like to give a warm welcome to our guest, Peter Lübeck, CEO of Game Habitat in Malmö. Welcome. May I call you Peter? Welcome, Mr. Lübeck.
You are welcome to call me Peter.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for having me.
You are the CEO of Game Habitat. What is Game Habitat?
Game Habitat is a non-profit community organization that works to create the best possible environment for games and game development in southern Sweden and in Malmö.
And you, Peter, you haven't been doing this all your life. You used to work at another studio in Malmö called Tarsier. How do you pronounce it?
Yeah, that's the biggest question of that company's existence.
Tarsier. It's some kind of animal. It's an animal with huge eyes, I think. But you were the COO there, and you were working with the Little Big Planet franchise, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct. I started Tarsier when we were about 15 people, and quite soon after we got the call from Sony asking us if we would want to develop the next Little Big Planet game. And the reason for that was that we had been helping out Media Molecule with DLC, like creating costumes and packs for Little Big Planet 1 and 2. But this was still a huge deal. We were a small studio, and we were trusted with one of the more important franchises that Sony had. And that was a crazy journey for us, just growing the studio to over 50 people and working with studios all over the world and making a really good game in the end. I mean, we created basically a full Little Big Planet game, but on a handheld, which was a huge challenge. But that was sort of the starting point of what later became what Tarsier is today. And after sort of wrapping up the work on Little Big Planet, it led into what we now see with the Little Nightmares franchise. And we also now have Little Nightmares 2 just came out and seems to be getting good reviews.
Yeah, I loved Little Big Planet. I can still wake up hearing the music from the first game, which was released really early in the career of the PlayStation 3.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, anyway, we're not here to talk about Little Big Planet. We're here to talk about a game that you are nostalgic about. We're here to talk about Gothic.
Where do you think you're going?
To the camp.
You ain't come to make trouble, have you?
Could you, describe, for somebody who has never heard of Gothic, which I think is quite a few, could you describe that game in for about 20, if you have 20 seconds, could you describe that game?
Gothic is now 20-year-old, groundbreaking third-person open-world RPG. It was way ahead of its time when it came out. It was made by a small German studio, and it set a lot of the recipes that we see now in big franchises like The Witcher and other RPGs.
That was 20 seconds. That was even less, I think. An RPG, of course, is short for role-playing game, which is a huge thing now and used to be a huge thing also in the 70s, 80s, mainly tabletop role-playing games, but then they kind of transformed into computer form. Like you said, it's an open world and third person, which was not very common. But I also remember that it was really hard because it required a lot from your computer.
It was a really beautiful game. I actually remember seeing it in a games magazine, this one screenshot, I guess, a year before or something. And that stuck with me. So already then, I got this idea what this game would be. and I was so hyped about it for a year. And then when it came out, it just blew my mind.
So what about the story, Peter? What about the narrative of Gothic? Is it a great story, or what's behind all what is happening in the game?
I mean, the story gets the job done. I think there's a lot of tropes that we gotten used to after, but basically you take on the role of this anonymous, no-name dude that is a prisoner. You have no idea what the crime he's done, what he's committed, and he's thrown into this prison colony that is in a valley that is covered by a magical dome. And this magical dome makes it impossible for the prisoners to get out, which also means that no one else can get out. So basically, the prisoners have been free to roam and create their own society. And that's a really important part of Gothic, is that you have these 3 different factions. You have like the main camp, and then you have 2 breakaway camps with prisoners that form their own groups with different values. And that's sort of where the choice for you as a player starts. You can explore these camps and figure out which faction you want to join.
But you said the story does its job, but it's not that important, really, which is the case in a lot of RPGs, I think. So what is it, if not the story is grabbing you as a player, what is grabbing you? I mean, when you are released into this harsh world, I think there's someone called Diego that is your teacher, your onboarding teacher, and then you are set free to do whatever. What is it that you liked so much about this thing of roaming free in an open world?
Yeah, I mean, the word that always keeps coming back is immersion. That is like being immersed in a world and feeling like it's a living, breathing world and you're part of it, which is basically the core value that I'm looking for when I play games. I mean, I can play games for multiple reasons, but the games where I can like lose myself in a world is the ones that have stuck with me. And Gothic is one of the best examples of that I've ever played. And it's still the game that I measure other games against when it comes to immersion.
Oh, wow.
And I think there's a few key factors that made that work. So one, you are thrown into this sort of open world sandbox. Basically, you get very little introduction. There is no tutorials. There is very little HUD. There's basically no interface. So you're just thrown into this world. You have no weapon. You have nothing, and the first thing that's going to happen for 90% of the players is that they're going to run into the first low-level enemy, and they're just going to get completely obliterated, and they have to, load the game.
Your own fault. Try that again, and you'll regret it. You poor jerk. You don't even have ore on you.
And then, you can find this rusty sword on the ground, and you pick it up, but you have no way to wield it. So basically, the character just goes around with the sword in front of him like this, and he doesn't really know what to do with it. And that's how it is for the first few hours of the game.
Okay.
Exactly like it would have been if you were thrown into that world and trying to figure out how to survive. When you play games back then, you had such a high tolerance for stuff like that, and also tolerance for bugs and weird annoyances, because I mean, this game is basically unplayable today. The controls, the interface, the bugs, it's just really, really bad. But nothing of that affected the experience back then, which is hard now, because now it would be impossible to play a game of that sort of unfinished level, I would say.
Right. As I said, I haven't played Gothic because I didn't have a computer that had high enough specs, but it was released in a time when RPGs, and correct me if I'm wrong, when RPGs were not third person. You saw whatever the character saw, but in Gothic, it was third person. You could see your character. So if you found a helmet and you put it on, you could actually see your character wearing that helmet, and that was quite new.
Yeah, and so that's one thing, and also what I mentioned about how when you picked up the sword for the first time, you could barely wield it. And that brings me to another part of what I really like about Gothic is the progression system. Because, of course, you go around, you do quests, and you kill creatures, and you get experience points. And then you level up, and then you get this skill points that you can use. But the only way to use them is to go to an actual character in the world that is good at that thing, like sword fighting, and ask them to train you. And what happens then is not that you just get this automatic stat boost, but you actually hear that trainer say, well, this is the mistake that most, newbies do when they start wielding the sword. So if you do like this instead, start holding it in this way, then, and then the character animation actually changes after that instruction. And that is just like the best, level up thing that I've ever seen in an RPG. It really makes you feel like, oh, I learned this thing. I learned this thing, and now my character behaves in that way. And it makes also this a huge upgrade. It's not like this incremental Diablo style.
Yeah.
You get this like, oh, I got 2.3% higher stat on my sword.
What is your strongest memory in Gothic? Is there a situation or a scene that you can still remember as one of the defining memories of Gothic?
Yeah, there is one of those like micro stories that I always, I think, come back to and tell other people when I try to explain Gothic. In the beginning, when you're a really weak character and you're just like trying to explore outside of this first camp, and you feel like, well, I have my sword, and maybe I got some weak armor or something at best, and you start to venture into the woods, and by then you've basically not seen an enemy outside of these big naked chickens that I mentioned, and then you just hear like this rustling in the woods, and then you just see like a shadow, and then there's a wolf, and then you're dead. Like it's instant, and you're so vulnerable, and you're so that the next time you go in there, you're super tense. It would be like going into the woods with wolves in real life and just be super scared. And I just remember how that was how I experienced that world. You sort of always have to be on point, and like be careful. And then as soon as you come to this next step in your progression, when you're taught how to use the sword better, then suddenly you can go past that section. You can master the wolves.
I usually ask my guests a few short questions that you are not prepared for. For example, if you could be a game character, any game character, who would you be?
I would be Link.
Link?
Without doubt, I would say. That's my gut feeling, my gut response.
Link is left-handed. Are you left-handed?
Sadly, no.
Sadly, no. Okay. Do you actually remember the first video game or computer game you ever played?
No, not specifically. I mean, it was probably NES games, Super Mario Brothers, probably. But no, I don't remember specifically the first game I played.
You didn't have a computer like a Commodore 64 or anything? It was the Nintendo NES that was your first gaming machine?
Yeah, actually, I didn't have game consoles or computers for a long time. Okay. Because I had an older brother that had an Atari, and he got rid of it. And then I guess my parents were a bit like, because he played way too much. So my parents, I don't think they were so keen on repeating that. So I played at my friend's for years. Actually, the first console that I bought was a PlayStation.
I'm going to ask you a very hard question now, the last question. I know you love your job and anything and everything, but do you have a dream project within the gaming industry? And what would that be? What is your dream to be a part of?
I mean, I've had a project in my head for years that keeps coming back, and I think it ties back to a few of the things we've been talking about. I would love to be working with sort of, I guess, a hybrid between maybe Zelda and Gothic.
Okay.
A sort of a mature version of Zelda that type of game. I really come back to that type of experience. So I actually have a notebook dedicated to this project. It's filled with notes and maps and characters and all of that. So it's the thing that haven't let go yet.
Okay, there you go. Venture capitalists and gaming studios. There's a notebook somewhere with a cash cow.
Who knows?
Peter, thank you so much for this interesting discussion about Gothic, this interesting discussion about games in general. I mean, you production managers and operatives, you have all the data and all the knowledge about what a great game is that we gamers don't normally have. So it's always interesting to hear your point of views. And also interesting to hear that every interview about games and every lecture of games you've ever had is measured, is compared to Gothic. That is good to know.
It is.
So
sadly, it's hard for anyone to experience it today. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And I wish you best of luck with your dream project.
I don't think I've seen you here before.
No wonder. I've only just got here.
Then watch out. The outside world is pretty dangerous.
Did you enjoy this episode? Then please do not forget to subscribe for more PC Games nostalgia.